lucky today, they could,
What else are we looking for?
oh, 3 of us, but I don't think it's a good day to be.
God is mobile.
Oh, you do? Okay. Who else were we waiting for on the board? Just Ryan? It's just the 4 of us, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, yeah.
It's been. Oh, I'm not having power yet.
Yeah. That would do it.
And it's my fault.
Yeah.
Voicemail.
Okay,
Hmm.
Yeah,
Should we
is there a
start?
vice chair to run the meeting?
me,
Yeah. It's your
So-
call, but
I can start. So this is the Board of Adjustment meeting for March 19th, 2026. Meeting is called to order. Can we take a roll call of who is present?
Caitlin McKenzie?
Theo Dexter.
And Bill Steelman. First of all, do we have any public comment on items that are not on the agenda today? Doesn't appear like it. Let's see here. Okay, so today we're going to be discussing PL 20250-142, which is 1258 Manitou Lane. And if the applicant has a presentation, feel free to go ahead. And we do a swearing in on this committee. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you.
Walter McGill, 4 Point Surveying and Engineering, here on behalf and with the Randolphs, John and Deborah. John's going to give a statement, and then I'll give a presentation about the project. So,
Okay.
And just for consistency, do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give is true and is true to the best of your knowledge? Perfect. Thank you.
Dear Planning Commissioners,
Maybe speak into the microphone.
we present the statement regarding the remaining 2 lots associated with our Fairview property, which our family has owned for approximately 40 years. Real close, right at 40 years, really. These lots have long been a part of our retirement planning, and throughout our ownership, we believe that they would remain reasonably developable, consistent with the surrounding residential neighborhood. We did not anticipate that selling our buildings on the final 2 lots would become such a prolonged and difficult issue. If we had chosen to build on these lots ourselves, our intention was always to work with the intermittent stream and design improvements that respected the natural site conditions. It is also our understanding that the Ryans, with whom we currently have an ongoing contract, have approached the property with the same intent, to work with the site constraints in a responsible manner rather than avoid them. When we first considered selling the lots, we approached adjacent neighbors, including the Hines and Carrot families, one on the south side, one on the north side, to determine whether they had interest in purchasing the remaining lots. Both declined. We believe it is important for the commission to consider that nearby properties have received flexibility where site constraints existed. In particular, the neighboring property to the south, Carrot, was able to obtain an adjustment allowing construction of a rental unit. It is our understanding that a different drainage interpretations contributed to that review, with one survey identifying approximately 20 acres draining to the stream and later survey identifying approximately 40 acres. While technical interpretations may vary, the physical conditions of the drainage itself have not changed, and it is difficult to understand why our lots now face a substantially different outcome. Under the city's major adjustment criteria, we believe this request remains compatible with the established development pattern of the Fairview neighborhood. Homes throughout Fairview are located relatively close to one another, and a 5-foot setback along the west side of the property would not be out of character with the existing neighborhood pattern or create a visual or functional impact consistent with the surrounding development. The requested adjustment also preserves a reasonable use of the property. Historically, our property contained 3 buildings. At the city's request, we removed 2 of those structures, including addressing asbestos concern as required. Since then, we have continued paying higher property taxes on the remaining 2 lots because they are classified as vacant land. These lots have carried the burden of ownership, while their practical development potential has become increasingly uncertain. Vacant residential lots in Steamboat Springs are rare, and without flexibilities, these lots may be left with significantly reduced reasonable use compared to similarly situated residential properties. We also believe the request reflects a hardship created by unique site conditions rather than by any action of the property owner. The intermittent stream, drainage interpretation, and associated setback create a constraint not commonly encountered on neighboring lots, yet those same lots have been allowed practical residential development. A modest adjustment would allow reasonable development while still respecting the natural features present on the site. With respect to the neighborhood character and public interest, a limited setback adjustment would not adversely affect adjacent properties, public infrastructure, drainage function, or neighborhood appearance. The surrounding area is already developed residentially, and the requested relief would allow the lots to develop in a manner consistent with the established pattern of the community. We are also uncertain how the wildlife corridor concern is being applied in this location, given the surrounding residential development and adjacent homes. From our perspective, the lots are bordered by existing neighborhood conditions, making it difficult to understand how this area functions differently from the nearby developed parcels. This process has now continued for approximately 1 year and has resulted in significant cost, uncertainty, and stress. Our understanding throughout has been that the city would work with long-standing property owners toward a practical solution where reasonable development remains possible. We respectfully ask the Planning Commission to consider the history of the property, prior nearby approvals, the established Fairview neighborhood pattern, and the major adjustment criteria that support flexibility where unique site conditions exist. We believe a practical solution is available that maintains the neighborhood compatibility, protects site features, and preserves reasonable use of these remaining lots. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Walter, before you start, I should have read this beforehand. I apologize. This is my first time acting as a vice chairman. So a minimum of 3 of the 5 Board of Adjustment members must vote to approve a major adjustment, even if a quorum of 3 members is present at the hearing, in which case the chair should advise the applicant that a unanimous vote is needed of all board members present for the project to be approved. And it is their option to request tabling the item to a date certain, thus removing the need for public notice if less than 3 members vote to approve the adjustment. The result is denial. So basically you need to have a unanimous vote, or because there's only 3 of us, or you can opt to table the
Yeah.
You know, it's,
Missing one of our board members is missing, so.
I saw that. So, yeah, thank you for telling us. We're going to proceed. We'd like to appreciate that. I think we've got
Okay.
a strong case here, and we've been at it a long time, and we do have an appeal to the city council if it doesn't go our way too.
Okay,
Okay, great. Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so John, if you'll grab a seat, I'll go ahead and take this down. So John, I wanted to have him, just so you get the context, because John and Donna came to me when they were told this at 95 square feet that they could develop. And that's because there's a setback that's being enforced on this property. Now, the property is up here on Manitou, and the purpose of this application is to establish a platted building envelope on this vacant lot. Now, on the east side, as you look at it, there's a drainage way, and the city all of a sudden, on this particular property, started to say that there's a 30-foot easement because it drains more than 20 acres. Now, they didn't do that to the property to the south when they approved a drainage and a storm drain to this property to the south, and they were able to pipe this easement with no drainage easement dedicated to the city. Mr. Carrot over here was able to build a carport and a home, his home and the carport and the ADU that are also in that 30-foot waterway easement. So if that had been enforced for years, then that would have taken out any buildability on the house to the north and a little bit on all these sides, a lot of these houses. So although, you know, the code, things get missed in the code, but we're not asking them to overlook the code. So what we've done is we worked with the engineering department to establish a top of bank per se on our lot to be the setback. And because of the size of that easement on our lot, we're limited. I'm going to move down here and kind of out of order, but I want to make sure I have time. So on your left, there's a little green piece here. That's the 95 feet when this setback is put in, plus a 10-foot RO setback on this side lot from the center line. And you can see it was forgotten and not noticed when these other properties were when were built out. 2020, Mr. Carrot put that in. That's under the CDC code of 2017. I think it's the Halversons down here on Flood subdivision. When they were approved, they didn't have to deal with any kind of drainage easements. So only having this 95 feet, Donna and John came to me and said, well, what can we do? And so we've established here on the right that the pink line here running up this side is the engineering approved variance. Now we still have to get a planning variance for the water body setback, but we're asking tonight more importantly for the 5-foot major adjustment to the side setback. Now in this lot, 5 times 140 is 700, and an ADU has a 5-foot ADU setback, not a 10. So we're basically talking about 300 square feet on this side. For mitigation, which is in your report from staff, we offered to put some trees on this side. Staff would have preferred if we had a buyer for the property and we were showing housing plans. So that's where you're hearing in your packet that it's incompatible because they can't make these final decisions. But it brings us back to the purpose of what we're trying to do. We're trying to get a saleable property so they can market something, so somebody can come along, so you, me, or somebody from the general public can look at this lot and say, well, what's defined on here? And I know the city doesn't like to get in building envelopes, they like setbacks, but we're here tonight to ask for that additional 5 feet on the west side to allow for a building at a certain width. So it's still not very big. On the whole thing, it's 23 feet across at its narrowest. This is some of the properties around us. We also looked at, as I was putting this together, when somebody in my office said, well, why didn't you pipe it? If we piped it, that would have to been on our property a 15-foot setback from this property line. But the city didn't want to allow this because piping is not preservation of waterways. And I can understand that. So, but this waterway per se, as it is on across the street, take a look at these pictures, and it's written up that this is a riparian or a wildlife corridor. Well, in fact, it's about a 4-foot seasonal drainage way, and you can see the neighbors come up here and they weed whack and cut the grass along the edges of here. So it's not so much a vibrant wildlife corridor. To the north, to the other side, and throughout this area of Fairview, it's piped in different places, it's underground, there's houses built a lot closer to it than this house. Let me see if I can zoom back out here. Oh, too far. That's the waterway. This is the piping that went across the street that hasn't had issues and didn't have any easements. So it caught the Randolphs by surprise, the realtors by surprise as well. And so the purpose of the RO code, you know, we talk about, and you've been up to Fairview, it is a bit eclectic. So yes, it has a potential to crowd this vacant lot that's a RO zoned lot a little bit more because it'd have the potential to go up to 5 feet here. As mitigation, we offered a 15-foot front setback to kind of alter front setbacks, but staff felt that that wasn't consistent with the neighborhood. The argument could still be made that consistency is not what makes Fairview a vibrant neighborhood. If you want consistency, you've got Sunlight, you've got some of our other subdivisions in town. We feel the proposal allows a reasonable building envelope it maintains significant open space in that drainage function because we'll still be giving more from the top of bank into the drainage way than the properties that weren't under the same code stipulations. They were under the code, but they weren't enforced on it. It still minimizes environmental disturbance. It allows clarity for development of the lot. You know, after 10 months of review, we feel this is a balanced and reasonable solution. We've had 2 staff walks out here. And I think that, you know, if you get out there, you had the chance to look at it or drive by, you can see to the north here, these other properties are built right up on here off of Saratoga on the same drainage way. There's not any flooding that has occurred here. If it did flood on the particular lot we're asking for the major adjustment on, it would be protected because of the grades. So it would actually go more to the southeast here. The 5 feet is an impact, you know, on the adjacent property. There is that 5-foot setback that's for a secondary accessory structure that could also be on there. And there's the last part with the water body setback. There was talk about how we were helping this riparian corridor. And I don't want to disparage this riparian corridor, but it's not the banks of the Butcher Knife. It is not the banks of the Yampa River. It's more of a seasonal, you know, yard here drainage. And we still continue to protect it. This cottonwood tree on this picture up in the upper right would be preserved as well. It's not in for perpetuity, but there's no plans to take it out. It'd probably get cleaned up. So it's been about 10 months. We're glad to be here tonight, and we look forward to some questions, and you can hear staff's presentation as well. So I'll stop the share and turn it back over for any questions. Maureen, would you like to speak during public comment?
No,
Part of our presentation? Okay, sure.
Yeah, actually, it's questions for the presenter now, so.
Okay. Okay, well, you can save it for public comment still.
well, no, it's not public.
That would be part of it. There'll be public comment to the agenda item.
Oh, okay.
So I'm the
Yes.
presenter
Yeah,
right
the
now.
public comments will come up.
Yep. We'll ask, is there anyone in the public? And we'll point right to you. One more time.
Walter, would you mind going to the image where it shows the water, the entire?
Yeah,
drainage,
let me
please?
see, I'm gonna share again. No meeting. There I
Yes, that'd be great. So would you mind identifying for me, if, for as much as you know, how the drainage is dealt with on the different properties here?
Sure. Well, there's a drainage way coming off of Howelson here.
Okay,
Howelson Basin has been determined to be about 40 acres. So it isn't a ditch coming down here. It crosses a gravel driveway and a 24-inch culvert. And then it's piped in this lot right here, which
Mhm.
is 435 Manitou.
okay,
It's allowed to be put in a pipe to give them more yard. But when the staff looked at that, they overlooked asking for any kind of easement. So the pipe is right off the corner of their yard and drops in. And it crosses on a 24-inch culvert underneath Manitou,
Mhm.
runs in the open ditch, which we go to preserve. The alley is not constructed back here. So that there wouldn't be likely to be a secondary access off of that side unless it was built by the new buyer. And then it goes underneath a fence here on the Saratoga property to the north, and it runs about 5 feet off of the edge of their house.
and it's daylighted.
It's daylighted. yeah,
Okay.
it's daylight again.
It looks similar to on this lot. It
Yep.
continues
It
down.
goes under, what's my next road there? That's Saratoga.
And so, but on that property that you just mentioned, just north of the subject lot, the,
Been mostly on this,
it's, the building is about 5 feet
the drainage way.
from the drainage way. And is that a relatively new or quite old?
No, that house has been there probably about 40 years.
Okay,
Crosses the road again.
yep.
And it's open drainage, but then, John, doesn't it get piped again before it gets down to 13th Street? Drainage? It's open drainage all the way down, which is Gilpin. Yep, okay, so then it's open drainage behind Gilpin Street as it runs down into 13th. At 13th, Sure,
interject?
you could help.
So I took the liberty of one afternoon last summer of walking from the bottom end of our property, which would be the east,
North side, yeah. Alleyway here.
and down and followed the stream down to the 13th Street.
Yep.
And yes, I was trespassing. Nobody saw me and it was just, didn't bother anybody, but I wanted to see what that stream did.
Mhm.
And it was really neat to see how everybody that lived along that stream incorporated into their yards and into their property in a lovely way. They had cute little bridges, they had tables. It obviously was not a problem or an issue or whatever. They just lived next to it
Mhm.
and incorporated it into their landscape. And then you got down to 13th Street, it disappears and it disappears all the way to the river, past the railroad tracks and everything, because it's all buried from there.
It's buried from there and down to the Yampa. Okay.
Upper part I've walked too, and that was interesting too. I finally did that after all these years of living there and owning it. And, yeah, just a benign little.
Yeah. So a small piece is piped and above the lot and then,
Only piped that one spot above.
okay, otherwise it's daylighted.
Without getting permission and.
No, they got a permission.
They did?
That's their plan. that we
Okay,
have here,
good.
yeah.
Mhm. Okay.
Whoever approved that, city, apparently.
Yeah. Thank you.
I have a question. Is there any data on the last time that drainage might have been completely full?
No, no, there's no
Okay.
evidence of any flood, high water marks or anything like that. The pipes that are in here, we've looked at those pipes and they're just a quarter full.
Yeah, I would think that'd be very evident, being familiar with the drainage in that part of town. When it comes down hard, it still takes a while to get down to that level. And I saw the ditch that was running through my property get to full capacity once in 10 years. And it didn't go above that. So,
I think we have our plan has a good setback, more so than any of the other neighbors. So what it did though, by giving that larger setback that engineering required, is it made the envelope very shallow. So that
Right.
13 feet came up 17 feet at the shallowest point. So we're asking for that additional 5. So a wider house could be marketed.
Okay.
Start with any restriction, without restrictions, it would start at 30 feet. So
okay.
middle 17 with this 30-foot that hasn't ever been enforced on other properties to come down to where we are to go to 5 on that one side.
Okay, thank you.
I didn't have any questions. Next, we move on to the presentation by the Department of Planning and Community Development staff. Jeremy, if you'd like to
Sure.
go over.
Jeremy Brown, City Planning. So the context has been nicely outlined by Walter. I think you're familiar with the project. We know as a high level base case, we'll start. This site certainly has hardship. Staff is not in disagreement with that. We'll touch into some of the struggles that we had in meeting the criteria for approval for these 2 major adjustments, the water body setback, and of course the side yard setback there to the west. I think the sort of more straightforward discussion and less issues from staff, but still not supportable, deals with the water body setback. As we looked at it, we found it was in compliance with all requirements of the major adjustment. We did not find that the request they proposed would be a grant of special privilege. We did find that it would be necessary due to the particular site conditions that exist there. And we found, as I mentioned, that this is an unnecessary hardship. What we struggled with, though, was assessing the impacts and whether or not we felt that those impacts were being mitigated. As you know, our specific criteria of approval explicitly instructs us that the Board of Adjustment shall begin with the assumption the variations from the standard create impacts on adjacent properties. this is a little more amorphous than a lot of other impacts that we see. Obviously, our side yard setbacks and buildings. So we turn to the purpose statements of the water body setback. Specifically, it talks to us about the riparian habitat, water quality, aesthetics, the reasons that we have the water body setback. So when you talk about impacts to adjacent neighbors, we're not just thinking flood control was obviously the primary. We get the green light from engineering on that. They explored it, as Walter said, decided that the adjustment that's proposed there is satisfactory in terms of creating a wide enough channel to handle all future flooding events, you know, to some degree of risk. When planning looks at it, because that granting of the drainage easement variance that they provided, when planning looks at it and we're looking at our water body setback and we're continuing to look at smaller things, you know, about that, we have 30 feet, not because perhaps it could be considered an arbitrary number, but it was a number that was set that we thought, well, by the time water traverses across this undeveloped space, we have less, you know, flash flooding, or we have less, you know, pollutants traveling into our streams or otherwise. I think staff, when we were looking for mitigation efforts, would have loved to see some, you know, restoration of the riparian area, which is admittedly underwhelming. That's not to be contested. But the idea of this 30-foot zone is to enhance it and make sure it doesn't get any worse. We know we allow things like pavement and decks and things. There's sort of a gap in our code there. Maybe there could be promises. These are all ideas. Staff cannot direct anyone toward these, but we would look toward some sort of mitigation effort in the interest of preserving the purpose of the water body setback if we are to allow them to construct the home in it. So broadly speaking, like I mentioned, just to walk through the last criteria for approval, yes, we believe this is the least modification possible. It's consistent with the CDC. And of course, there's the additional water body setback criteria that tells us strict enforcement will deprive the owner of reasonable use of the property. For all those reasons, we support it, but because of the inconsistency and staff's opinion that they cannot meet criteria number 5 in mitigating impacts, under that alone, we find that we cannot support the water body setback adjustment as proposed. The second adjustment was for the major adjustment to side yard setback to go from 10 feet to 5 feet. We found the applicant's justification of the criteria number 1, that it's in compliance with the RO zone district to be consistent. Criteria number 2, however, whether or not assessing it was a grant of special privilege. There was mention about how we know that this particular neighborhood and in the RO zone district, we do have a very eclectic building typology that happens there. We have lots of legal non-conforming residences. Quite often we use that to justify placement or setbacks, in this case, varying from the standard. However, without building plans in this particular one, or the applicant's willingness to otherwise self-limit the future building potential of this site by, if we have to look at the full extents of this proposal. So if they say they want a 5-foot side yard setback for the entire length of the property, staff's the risk, or even the fear of staff, is we see 100% utilization of this setback that's granted. So the ability of, and we know the interest as indicated by the Randolphs, is they really are trying to sell the property. So very understanding what's happening. It's a difficult position to be in, but if you're someone that acquires the property, you know, in Steamboat, just by land prices alone, you probably have to maximize a lot of the site. There is concern that the house would sit 5 feet away at the full building height for the full length. If someone were to utilize that, which we don't know, but we have to make the assumption, we do think that would be a grant of special privilege, and would find that criteria number 2 inconsistent. Whether or not it's necessary, broadly, I know we've spoken that something is necessary on this site, but it's whether or not the proposed setback is necessary. And we can't assess that. We, at this time, don't know, unfortunately, without, floor plans or dimensional standards to say, I mean, if someone were to, I apologize, I forget the range and width of the buildable space, but presumably somebody could come in with a house that is 18 feet wide or 16 feet wide or something smaller, and it could vary where we would think that they could push it more toward the stream. But in this case, if they feel like optimizing sort of a yard space over by the stream, their ability is to push it all the way over to the 5-foot side yard setback. So that comes into play when we assess, is this exact adjustment necessary? We don't really know because they don't have a necessary building plan that we can help or encourage them to push one way or the other, or say that you have a, extra large garage, we think it could be smaller. Those things do happen when we typically review floor plans. Criteria number 4, whether or not it was an unnecessary hardship. Again, in this case, staff also believe that even with the water body setback adjustment, there will likely need to be some sort of adjustment or consideration. This is just based on building construction, modular sort of development. We buy materials in 4x8 foot sheets of plywood. So there will probably need to be some adjustment granted for this property. Criteria number 5, whether or not it will adversely impact legal conforming uses of adjacent properties. And this is probably one of the biggest ones, and looking at the mitigation to this impact, staff would probably hang the hat largely on this discussion to say that the applicant has presented that the impact mitigation involves some trees or some fence opportunities. At the onset, it's very difficult for us to assess the impact. Similarly, in the previous criteria where we talked about assessing the impacts of the greatest extent that could be built there, if we end up having a full height, 34-foot tall building and it's the entire length of the property, that is seemingly impactful and just in terms of light and visibility and access, and it would be obviously helpful to look at a building plan. We knew that wasn't coming through this process. We certainly tried to be creative and understanding. Understandably, the applicant isn't interested always in saying, well, we want to do one story for part of it, or we want to limit and, only build along 50 feet of the setback. But again, without that faith or guarantee, it was difficult and staff could not find support for this criteria either. We did, as Walter mentioned, we did look at in this zone district, to be clear and for consideration of the board, RO allows accessory structures to be up to 5 foot setback. So they are automatically granted, if you want to build a garage or any accessory structure, you can build it 5 feet away from your property line. So we did try to think about that and understand what is the baseline of the code in terms of encroachment. Now, it's not perfect. We know that garages and accessory structures are often, further back, and people might care less about 2 garages sitting close to each other or otherwise, but there is some consideration to be taken there. But again, when we look at the totality of the project and the 100% built impacts, we just couldn't find support for it. Criteria number 6 talks about the least modification possible. Again, difficult under this circumstance to understand what least modification possible might be, so we could not find support for that. Criteria 7, there are no existing nonconformities to be considered. Criteria 8 talks about whether it is consistent with the purpose intent of the CDC. We can't, in the case, to understand the purpose and intent. We know that we do support infill development, but staff could not determine if this particular request, and that's what a lot of this hinges on, and I'm sorry for reiterating myself so often, is that it's hard to make an analysis on this particular request if all 5 feet are needed of adjustment, or whether it's 4 feet or 3 feet, or otherwise. With that, staff find that of the 2 adjustments requested for this lot, we find it to be the criteria for approval to be inconsistent for both adjustment requests, and therefore must recommend denial of PL 2025-0142.
Okay, and now it's an opportunity for board members to ask questions. I'll ask a first question. So Jeremy, you said that engineering did look at this and opined on the 30-foot setback versus something less. Am I hearing you correctly?
Engineering assessed this, and they looked at it from a drainage perspective to see essentially what was the least amount of drainage footprint that would be required to have, for public safety reasons. They need 2 things essentially. One is they want access to maintain drainage ways, but then they also want to look at it and say, is it going to spill over the banks? Is it going to cause channeling? Are there any changes that would happen to otherwise have negative impacts from a flooding perspective downstream? So what they determined was the application before you, that plan meets engineering standards.
Okay. And do you have any idea where the neighboring lots required to make any type of adjustments to their properties to avoid flooding or?
As was mentioned by the applicant, it does not appear that the lot across the street to the south, so they piped that drainage. I do not believe it was identified at the time. So one of the standards comes out of our definitions for water courses is catchment areas over 20 acres. So at the time, maybe it was, you are allowed to pipe streams or water courses. I apologize. That is an option available to you. There's still what Walter was referencing. They still want a drainage easement so that they can access that underground pipe if they know it's, for this one of these drainage areas. So that was overlooked to the south, and that drainage access easement could have impacted the building that was there. Certainly the building to the immediate east, as you look at it, for all my research, appears that it was not identified by the surveyor or applicant at the time. City staff have a finite amount of capacity to be double checking professionals' work. Was not identified as a drainage easement, or as maybe Walter suggested, it was 20 acres and somebody thought it was just under the threshold of 20 acres and somebody else had an opinion of 40 acres. So it does not appear, with certainty, the building to the east was, by my research, constructed without any constraints placed on it to the 30-foot water body setback.
Thank you. Caitlin,
Yeah, I had a question. Do the variances that we approve here at our hearings, do they carry and stick with a property, or if a property buys or sells, does it have to be pre-approved?
No, the variances will go with this property. although it does have a limit, so someone would have to utilize this variance approval within, I apologize, each of the development plans are a little different. It's 2 or 3 years, and then it expires. So it would not be in perpetuity if somebody didn't apply for a building permit and basically act upon this approval within a couple of years. And give me a second, I will come up with that number for you.
Okay. So that's different for each variance. It depends.
It's not for variance, I apologize. It's for the development plan section. Each various types of development plans have different ones. So this is term and effective approval. Approval of a variance. Oh, I apologize. I'm in variance, not adjustment. Term and effect of a major adjustment shall be final on the date of the Board of Adjustment resolution approving the adjustment, remain in effect for 3 years from the date of approval.
I have a question. Is there any, it seems to me that there's a lot of concern on the part of planning, et cetera, that there's an unknown building envelope. It's one great big building envelope, and that provides a lot of uncertainty. And at the same time, the Randolphs really would like to not have to probably do all kinds of architectural work for a property that they don't plan on living in. Is there any kind of an accommodation that could be added to an approval that would limit a percentage of the buildable area to be limited to a certain percentage? You know, the built part could be not as big as the whole lot, and then perhaps that would still be enough for planning to, be satisfied with the position on the lot and how long the walls are and heights and things.
Absolutely. I think that was because, there's a bit of unusual process to not have floor plans to look
Right.
at. I think some of the interest would be that it steered into that direction.
Mhm.
And that would be a way to find some support and engage some levels of impact and how that might be addressed. Understandably, and I don't mean to speak on behalf of the Randolphs, that puts further constraints on their lot. And
Right.
through discussions, I'm not sure that was of necessary interest, but you can absolutely reference the applicant independently.
Yeah, I know in other hearings that we've had here, we've gone with the planning approvals and then added conditions to them about, different things about roof heights and ceiling heights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So adding a clause about the development potential or mitigation efforts is something that we've done before in hearings.
Yeah, you can add conditions of approval as they relate directly to helping meet the criteria for approval from your findings.
Mhm.
If you guys have, obviously, whatever your findings are independent of ours, so you're welcome to create those. You can do it through additional rounds of a submission. If you're leaning a particular way, we've had it where an applicant is interested in offering something different, they can come back. If you can come to agreement here in a meeting, that's possible. That's sort of in your court.
Okay.
This is maybe a little bit redundant on Theo's question, but when there's ultimately a plan to build a home on this and it goes before planning commission, if it's determined that some of these fears of blocking the light or too close to the property line or snow disbursement or whatever, Does planning have the opportunity to overrule what we've done, or?
No, so if this is approved as presented today, there's no, in single-family homes that don't go through any development review, they go straight to building permit. City planning staff have eyes on them. They don't go to, obviously, planning commission or anything. Planning staff look at them to make sure they're in compliance, and we would look against the code and we would look in compliance against this approval. So as long as the house did not encroach past the 5-foot setback, if that were to be approved, or in the envelope created by the water body setback, then staff would be required to approve it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
All right. Now we've got time for public comment. And if you wouldn't mind just stating your name.
Noreen Moore.
And
I'm currently living in Fairview again. I've lived in many a place.
We have to sign you in.
oh, yeah,
Right?
I'm sorry.
You should be.
Oh, I got to get sworn in?
Got to be sworn in.
Do you affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is true and to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just a little bit of history, and I'll try to keep it short. I have a variety of different points. Number one, they bought this property 40 years ago. 40 years ago, this property was in the county. And for those of you who ever worked in the county with surveys, it's all questionable, because I have had many a property like in Oak Creek and many other places, and I will tell you, the lines were never what you thought they were. And how we worked it out was a handshake. I know personally, we had a 15-foot question on one lot, and the neighbor had built a garage on 15 foot of our property, what ultimately was our property. And the interesting story behind that is that 15 foot was used in a poker game. And it was sucked back and forth, back and forth. The abstract on it was this thick. That was all the betting stuff that went on. So we worked a handshake and said to our neighbor, look, you're a great neighbor. We'll put our fence up to your building and then we'll go around. You can get it platted. And that's what we did. You know, there was a fair amount of trust and a fair amount of knowledge. So I've been in the Valley for 55 years. So, and one of the key things that's about the Valley is that sense of trust, neighborliness, and commitment to each other, and to what seems fair. And I was on the committee that helped arbitrate with the city about bringing Fairview into the city. And the reason for that was that the city wanted to expand west. And they knew that ultimately building would go on. They wanted to make sure they were in place for capturing the tax. Very prudent, very wise. So when we got there, you couldn't build a place in Fairview because the sewer had been condemned. So you had a bunch of different vacant lots and a couple of, and it was always known kind of, for those of you who've been here long enough, as kind of the hippie place, because that's who lived there. It wasn't a beautiful place like downtown. Anyway, that said, what we all had were things that people just did. And if you looked at the property, and you know, for any of us, those kinds of things were not considerations. So in Fairview right now, we have buildings that are built on the alleyways. We have lots of things that would not comply with the current plans. So you're trying to template a very respectable plan over something that never aspired to be that. So the main thing here is that the Randolphs have purchased that land just like all of us did at that time, because we wanted to build once the sewers went in. And we all built the same kind of thing with the same kind of mentality. You know, it was like, okay, you can do that and you can do that. I think the challenge here is modern plans and old plats are not a good marriage. You can see in downtown, your plots are pretty straightforward. If you were to look at a map at Fairview when it got brought into the city, you will notice a lot of very strange lot lines. And by the way, when we talk about this seasonal stream, and please remember that, this is not a large current, always going body of water. So remember that there is 5 of them coming down off of Hallison. This isn't the only one. If you go along Saratoga, you will spot, oh, and they don't feed into each other. Somehow, maybe some do, but it used to be the streets were called First, Second is Gilpin, Third is the one that the city now owns and it's not developed. And then there was Fourth, which would be whatever that is over there. And they all got renamed. But remember a few things, like 3rd Street that has not been opened up or developed by the city, has water going down it too. So you can look at a lot of places in Fairview that takes that drainage off of Hallison. And whether it's 20 acres, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but there's a lot of us who've been living on that property and in that neighborhood for a long time. And long before these kind of rules came around, or the awareness even, of, watching out and stuff. But I will tell you, none of these creeks have ever peaked and gone into anybody in the 50 years that I know of, maybe somewhere. These are little itty bitty streams. And as you know, this year, maybe none. So what I'm getting to from the historical point of view is I think the Randolphs are being hung out to dry. And speaking of a wet waterway, but and that may be too blunt for all of you, but the truth of it is all of us cooperated with each other in Fairview and elsewhere. And we wouldn't sue them. We'd go up to them and say, hey, I got a problem with this. But because they have a feisty neighbor that likes litigation, it's before you. So I find that very questionable, especially since so many places in Fairview are built not according to the laws that you're trying to implement now. God bless you. You're very good about trying to implement these things. It's forward movement and evolution, but you have to consider the people. And the people of Fairview were always the common ski bums. We'd live in chicken coops. But in any case, I find it interesting that you have a rule that says the person who owns the lot has to prove up that they don't do something wrong. Our system of justice is that the litigant is, or whoever is here, is innocent until proven guilty. It feels a little odd to me that that's the case. So the other parts are that there is lots of things going on. I mean, lots. If you were to start cleaning up Fairview and some other old neighborhoods, you'd be taking down structures that people live in because they're illegal. So I would recommend that you just pass this and stop putting these people on the ropes. I have no financial interest in what they're doing. But the reason we all arbitrated to get our community within the community of Steamboat was we wanted housing. We wanted housing. And that still stands. I can't imagine some of the original people that were there going by their lot and it's empty because of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, now we've got a response to the comments. Staff, do you have further comments to add?
No, staff do not. There may be public comment online as well. I don't know, but have you checked for public comment online as well? Or are you responding to each public comment?
I don't have a method to check for public comment online.
I'm looking at it now. I'll ask, is there anyone online that would like to make public comment? It looks like Doug K is on.
Yes. Hi, I'd like to make public comment. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you can.
Swear him in.
I can't.
Oh, yeah.
I'll let you take it from here.
Do you affirm the testimony that you're about to give is true and to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Mhm.
Okay. My name's
Yes.
My name's Doug Corrett. I own the property to the east at 1212 Manitou. I have been in Steamboat since 1986 and lived in Fairview almost 20 years now. I just have a couple things to say. I mean, kind of in the vein of what planning is talking about and what Jeremy is talking about. I've been trying since the beginning of this to understand what the impact of these adjustments will be on my property, specifically with respect to that drainage way. I have spent money. I've hired engineers. Those engineering reports are in your packet, and I won't repeat them here. But as I think Walter mentioned, if there is a significant event through that corridor, it is going to impact my property because I am downhill and to the south and east, or to the north and the east of the Randolph property. And so without any type of real plan as to what's going on there, without any understanding of how that drainage way will be filled or graded or anything, it's been a real struggle for me to understand how this may impact my property in the event of a major event. And so I have concerns there. Those are in my packet, or in the comments that I've submitted. So, you know, that is really my biggest concern. The Randolphs have kind of been my neighbor since I moved there. They've never lived on that property, but it's difficult for me because the Randolphs aren't going to own this property pretty much as soon as this request for adjustment goes through. They're going to sell the property. They're not going to be my neighbors, despite what Noreen may think. I'm not a feisty neighbor who likes litigation, but I don't even know who my neighbors are going to be. I don't know what this property, how it's going to be actually developed. And so those are my concerns. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Any questions?
Do you have any,
Oh, questions over?
staff, do you have further comments?
Staff are happy to answer questions, but have no further comments.
Talk to ourselves now.
Is there anybody else online?
Yes.
Need to check if there's anyone.
Applicant, do you have further comments?
I swear you in again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for the hearing so far. We appreciate it. You know, to public comment from Doug Carrott that the engineering questions have been asked and answered by engineering. That staff saw that report previously at Public Works before, and they've set the side on the Randolph's property and determined. So we know that building envelope. That's why we feel that we're at the top of the bank and things are going to move. And so we're not going to, the Randolphs, the future owners of the property, are not going to go in and develop that area along the riparian corridor. So we're preserving more of it. I think when I hear staff wrap it up about the inconsistency, but the fact is it's the inconsistency of the staff on the two projects that have been adjoiners here that gave the Randolphs this appearance and this understanding that they would always be able to build onto this lot, because these were recent developments that staff overlooked, got misengineering reports. But now we've got more staff and they've got more time to look at these things, they've determined that this 30-foot was one thing that crowded us. So we went with engineering. We got this 30-foot down to about 11 in some areas and 16 and 18 on others. But having that 18-foot setback or 11 on the one side reduced the buildability on this lot. So the inconsistency comes from when you're at an Old Town lot and you have 30 feet, and now you all of a sudden get a drainage easement that nobody else had to deal with in 2026, that people didn't deal with in 2020 and didn't deal with in 2018. And we're able to build, and the Randolphs watch that stuff get built. They were listing the lot at that time. And so now we're asking for this major adjustment. Now, we could have gone for a minor adjustment at 2 feet in. So we could ask for an 8-foot, and then staff would have been looking at this. But felt we just needed a little bit more to make the lot more attractive to people. Certainly lots are for sale for a lot, and people are coming into this community that aren't Fairview hippies and things like that. But the point is to determine this so somebody doesn't buy this lot and then have to go through the same process again a year. More comments, hiring me, hiring other people, wetland people to look at this lot as well. So your tonight is important, I think, and it just settles it for this lot, a building envelope. We'll take a condition. We'd like to have trees on that side if that's something things can mitigate. But we're really not talking about a lot of land. If it's 125 foot when you put the setbacks in here on this lot on the side, and so every foot is 125. We've got 625 square foot additional area that we're looking for in this building envelope, which isn't a whole lot on this property. So look forward to your decision.
Walter, quick question. If I'm on page 25 of the packet, there's a drawing by you, the site plan, and there's a gray area hashed out.
On the right-hand side,
Yeah,
that is the setback determined by the engineering staff.
and that's what you're asking for, right?
No, we're on the left side. We're asking for that 5-foot instead of a 10-foot on the west property line. So we're not getting any closer to Doug Corrett's property, but the east side has been determined and is fixed as a building envelope line, basically.
Can you just tell me that one more time? I'm not following it.
So on the east side where the drainage way is, there's a hatch there that's gray, a light gray, I believe. Jeremy, do you have that page 25? Thanks, we can share it.
I heard the 17, around the set 11 to 17 feet, so I saw.
So that's from the edge of it. We said that drainage way is 4 feet wide. So in a certain area, it's going to be 7 feet from the edge to that edge of that gray area. So in there, pointer's gone, but 7 down low, Jeremy, right there is the 7-foot, and then it gets wider. And engineering wanted to have that straight line from that angle point going to the north. So that entire area is kind of a no-build zone, no disturbance zone. So this is thanks for this, bringing up this slide, Caitlin, because that shows the difference that we're talking about on the 2 pink lines on the left-hand side. And that's really what the topic is the major adjustment to the side setback. So that's where I'm saying that's a total of, we're asking for 5. The original RO zoning is 10 there. But you can follow my arrows on the east-west direction to see how wide the building envelope is right there. Jeremy's taking us there. So from the top, we have a 27.8, we have a 28.8, and a 29.9. So we're trying to get 30 was the original, and we're asking for that 5-foot additional. We think that anyone that builds on the lot may go out to probably a 28-foot wide property, home on there. There's not going to be the access for an ADU unless they want to build that alley in the back from, I think it's not Gilpin, but the Westerly Street, and come in and build that whole alleyway. Mr. Corrett had built partially the alley, but he didn't do the water crossing on his part where he built his carport to access his property. So it's really that pink area we're trying to determine, which would basically be a building envelope, which you've seen on some plats. Most recently, you can see them on Barn Village. There's building envelopes. The Glen Overlook property has building envelopes on it. And building envelope here will be it'll be determined by the RO setback on the north line, and then hopefully it would be determined by this 5-foot major adjustment on the west line, and then back down in the front, the 15. The east line will be that variable line along the drainage way in that gray hatch.
That's what I can follow. Can you show me
So
when you're proposing for that water body?
it's going to be right where the white and gray meet. So that's going to be, yep, you can't build anywhere further than that closer to the stream waterway.
What's recommended by engineering?
Yes, yep.
And that's what you're asking for.
We're asking for that plus the 5 feet on the west line.
Okay.
Yep, that's our major adjustment.
Build within the gray
Correct.
area, and that's right.
I think that gives it an ability to build, and still people are going to want to walk around their house. They're going to want a snow shed. You know, we talked about saying, well, it'd have to have a fence there, but I think that the property next door is in, they'll be subject to a 10-foot setback. In other zones, up in RN4 at Sunlight, there's 5-foot setbacks on properties. So it's not something that we don't see in the city. We didn't measure all the houses in Fairview, but I do think they're offset in different directions. But it's kind of there's some inconsistency of this plan to all the criteria, but there's inconsistency on what's been applied against this lot. You can see here the 30-foot setback from flow line that would have affected Mr. Carrott's property if he brought that in tomorrow instead of where he's built now. He built that back unit in 2020 with this being overlooked. So he's gotten a special circumstances, or he's got an unrich adjustment on his property. So I think it won't hurt the property, won't hurt the riparian area, and it won't be a big impact to the neighborhood, but help this lot move forward and be an infill property. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then Walter, just one other thing, the proposed mitigation on the west side was a couple of trees and a fence.
Yeah, offered them both up. You know, staff, I understand, didn't want them but we've had that trees are over at the, trees have been mandated in some newer subdivision to have 2 front trees or something like that. So I think adding that to approval condition would be great, to say it has to have, you know, at least 2 deciduous trees, or, you know, Colorado blue spruces, they grow immensely. You know, you always planted them in the wrong place, and then 10 years later but on that side lot line, so that would be good too. So.
And what's the significance? Part of your proposal mentioned a further setback from the street.
Further setback from the street, because we figured 22 feet to get parking off the street and out of the right of way. So it could probably give some up because it's so narrow up there. But that would be an offset to some of the street facing that staff wasn't in favor of. But I think it's an offer out there to go back for a 30-foot front setback. So.
Okay.
DOA members, do you have any final questions for the staff for the applicant?
Nope. Me.
No questions.
No. Would you like to open up for discussion?
Let's discuss.
Okay.
I think one of the main missions of the Board of Adjustment is to take a look at situations that are as they are rather than they should have been. We very often have presided over situations where a lot was not known about a property right up until they got to us. But I think our mission is to find compromise to allow non-conforming situations to fit in, although they don't fit all of the criteria. I think the biggest issue going against the plan is that there's no building plan to go with it. And that's reasonable why there is no building plan. But it does give some uncertainty going forward since the adjustment stays with the property. And so if it's not stated somehow that there's some direction, if there's some way to do some direction towards setting aside actual building envelopes. That would be my suggestion. But with that, everything else to me says go on all the other issues, even though they're inconsistent.
One thing I found interesting is that there was no public comment from the neighbor on the west side.
Mhm.
Now, I know that there's an empty lot. It's basically an empty lot there, but there would be a vested interest on that property owner
Oh,
dealing
absolutely.
with the 5-foot encroachment.
Oh, absolutely. I don't doubt that interest.
Yeah. Caitlin, did you have any?
Yeah, just what I was reading through the proposal and hearing from planning and everybody as I hear, and we support infill development requests around the city with limited vacant lots here in town. But this request for a major adjustment does create, the lot obviously has a hardship with this large water body running through it. So that's often when we see these proposals come in front of us is because of these hardships that the current property owner is dealing with. But we don't want to have additional hardships placed on the neighboring lots. So coming up with clauses for mitigation opportunities would help me to, grant an approval on this.
Do you have any suggestions for?
Well, the two things that the Planning Commission was concerned about with mitigation was on the riparian zone and then on the 5-foot setback. So like we were talking about with adding trees or landscaping or fences to buffer those boundaries sounded like good options.
And a 5-foot setback, you got to have some real straight trees.
Right.
My suggestion would be other kinds of
Fence.
shrubbery, but.
Yeah, or fence or what else would
fence
you
or
think?
whatever. A low fence.
Mhm.
Privacy fences, low
Mhm.
fence.
What do you think?
I agree with the two of you.
Mhm.
I think it's a reasonable proposal. It would be nice if there was some mitigants that we could come up with. I'm not sure how we codify exactly
Mhm.
the size of the trees or the,
I think it has to be a little bit vague and it'll be a condition on the variance that'll be reviewed when the building permit comes through, is what I would say. And I did consider in here that we don't want to grant a special privilege by maxing out the building size on the lot, but, looking at the constraints placed on this lot of, the building envelope is super skinny and then it gets wider at the back. I think that naturally is going to be taken into consideration during the design process. That's already another hardship is that size. So I did look at that when I was thinking through it. And do you guys think we would need to put some restriction on the?
I think it'd be useful to add like you said, a vague.
Yeah.
No. Vague can still be considered as going forward in whoever is interpreting what should be done with a lot, but I don't know if it's binding.
So,
Well, there's also the applicant's suggestion of the 3 trees and the fence that could be incorporated into the final decision.
Okay. Should we vote on trees and bushes? How do we approach that? You do need some direction,
I guess I
Jeremy.
could attempt to make a motion and see if you guys agree with it.
That's it. That's it.
Okay, do we have a motion?
Well, we need, right, is a motion with conditions.
You would want to determine, I think, the language of the condition fairly explicitly in this meeting. And I would also suggest before taking the time to vote and approve something that the applicant may or may not agree with, you may take the opportunity to ask if that's acceptable to them. I know they suggested that. That would probably be the best way to go about it.
Protocol. Okay.
Is that kind of where we're leaning? Should we ask the applicant?
Excuse me.
Yeah, I think we'd, like trees or fence, but or then the size of the tree. But if you want to go both, we'll probably accept that as well. So.
Okay. What's your feeling on the building envelope or limiting the maximum building size in any way?
Well, I guess we could do that with Jeremy could help me here, but that could be a floor area ratio. We could find out, let's call the square footage of the building envelope 1,200 square foot right now, maybe.
Mhm.
And then we could say it can be, the house footprint could be 80% of the envelope. That may be something you could put forth. We could take 3 trees, one of them being a Colorado blue spruce along that property line, and that could be offset where it could have room to grow. But Theo's right, on the narrow part of the 5 foot might just be aspen trees to separate that. I think we'd rather see trees there for the people that move in than mandating of fences, because it's not something you see a lot of yard to yard fences in that area. So those would be my 2 recommendations on the conditions.
So just so I get it right, you're thinking that, Jeremy, does that make sense to do?
I wouldn't necessarily do a home size based on the building envelope, if only for the discussion earlier that the home size itself, we would support anything that meets the RO standards for building size. But what we're necessarily trying to regulate or consider is how much of that building is in the adjustment being given or in the side yard setback, right? You care more about the position than the size of it, actually. So I think, and I don't know what this answer is, if staff is just giving an opinion and advising, it would probably look at the amount of the adjustment being utilized. So of that 5 foot strip along the length of the lot, are you using 50%, 70%, 100%? That probably would have been in terms of lot coverage, that's probably the best way to understand the impacts rather than just, I don't think planning staff in general would have any problems or consideration for otherwise adjusting the maximum building potential in the RO district in terms of like floor area ratio or lot coverage, because that would generally be seen as acceptable to the public.
Right. I heard you, one of the concerns was granting a special privilege to the property.
Say again, or
So
what's
one of the
question?
concerns or why the proposal didn't meet the planning commission's approval was because we didn't want to grant a special privilege if they, like you said, were maxing out.
Correct.
So that's where I was just trying to mitigate that.
Yeah. No, yeah, I absolutely understand. Yeah,
Yeah,
I just, at this
But the
point,
floor area ratio would be better. You're just thinking about the length of that building envelope.
I think the lot coverage in the adjustment request, so in that 5, the difference between the 10 feet and the 5 foot side yard setback,
Yep.
understanding maybe what that lot coverage would be the best indicator to consider impacts over adjusting the whole site FAR.
Okay.
Again, I can't necessarily advise on what may be a tipping point for that. It wasn't anything we analyzed at this point. That's in your court now. If you want to make a consideration, that's probably just the metric that I would use to begin that consideration.
Indeed.
Walter, how does that sound to you?
That sounds good. I think to what Jeremy's saying is you have that area and it has 15 foot on the front and 10 in the back. So it's 125 feet long by 5 feet wide. So that's at 625. If there was a utilization of 50% or 75% of that area, that's acceptable, but it gives us a little bit more area for just the building. So a person could have a narrower front and then a wider back, and that would help mitigate with the neighbor next door. So 50, 75% of that area would be great.
I
Yeah.
like that idea.
Thank you.
Go with the 75% of that area. I think it will work out
Okay.
as one of the conditions.
I guess we need to.
Formulate in a, might take me a minute. How do you guys feel about the trees versus the fence on the other condition? And or,
I would go and/or.
And/or, yeah.
I agree.
Aspens can spread a lot, so.
I don't want to get,
Fences don't
I don't think it's worth getting that specific. I think if we can leave it more vague and allow when the design process comes through to make sure that's just a piece that they're reviewing.
So on.
Okay. Jeremy, where would I find the recommendation? Or like isn't there words for the
So
condition?
it's kind of a double negative. There's a
Yeah.
recommendation, the resolution's at the end, and the resolution is denying the major adjustment.
Yeah,
So if we were to make a motion to approve the applicants, we'd be denying the motion. Is that correct? Because the motion is to deny the applicant.
Yeah, you would make a recommendation to deny the proposed resolution. You could make what we'll need to do, and this is a bit unusual to you. Unfortunately, we will have to write up come back with the findings and a resolution to approve with the conditions for approval at the next meeting. Because we can't necessarily, what happens in recommendations for denial is staff prepare the resolution based on our understanding and our findings. You all, I've been taking notes on what you're talking about, and that's fine. I will redraft the resolution for you based upon the findings that you have if you go in the other direction. But it will have to come back to another meeting with a resolution prepared for you.
written. Mhm.
Yeah, for you to accept. So we'll include the conditions of approval. And if you direct us to, we will write your findings into a resolution for approval. And then you would vote on that at the next meeting.
Sounds like the most fair way to do it.
It's how we have to do it, yeah.
Try.
So
So I am recommending denial of the resolution BOA 2026-01, correct? And I am directing the staff to write a recommendation of the major adjustment PL 202504142 and add conditions for approval, including the addition of trees or fence within the 5-foot east setback, as well,
I believe it's 5 foot west.
5-foot west setback, and as well as in the east water body setback. Yeah. We are also recommending or asking staff to write a condition for approval of a 75% utilization to restrict to a 75% utilization of the portion of the lot, which is 125 by 5 feet on that west building envelope.
that's great. Can you be explicit on what you would like staff to, or that condition to read in terms of fence and trees, number, height? And it can be as vague as you would like, but understanding, I just asked the question to make sure that we are reviewing it accurately with the intent of the Board of Adjustment. If there's a number of trees, if there's a height or transparency or otherwise of the fence, let us know.
I'm not sure. I think that just asking for some sort of mitigation, it really benefits both properties to have some sort of a division with a fence or trees. I don't know a number that's in my mind for number of trees or height of fence. You guys?
No.
We do a
Can we leave it
percentage
with just
of the
trees,
125
multiple
feet?
trees and fence? Or fence?
You can leave it generally. It will be, again, mostly difficult to make sure that staff is fulfilling your understanding of your condition. If it says trees, 2 would be a plural of tree, which I'm not saying that's unacceptable. I'm just expressing what that limit would be and we would support. If it says fence, it's unclear at this time how much should the fence be the length of the building? Should it be a rear yard fence, front yard fence, 4 feet, 6 feet? If they have a 4-foot length of fence somewhere, is that acceptable as a screen? So just things to think about. Our hands are tied by whatever condition you write and of course is acceptable to the applicant that you agree on.
Okay. Yeah, I appreciate that advice. What do you guys think? You should add to the condition with the fence, size of the fence or number of trees.
I think going along with the applicant's original proposal with the and/or makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
rather than
And
debating amongst the number of trees.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be good if it especially screened any buildings. Don't need trees where there's open. Don't need to screen open space so much.
Do we want to say if a fence the length of the lot line or?
Or an ample.
Then 4 trees?
Ample number of trees to provide.
Ample is very vague.
Very vague.
There is
25 feet, okay? Let's think about it this way.
Okay.
Is the length, if we go all the way along and we divide that into, gosh, well, if we had 12 trees, there'd be 1 tree every 10 feet. But that doesn't sound very good, so you might have different bunches, but I think that's what Jeremy is saying, is that they'll need direction for density of trees that we're recommending. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Jeremy, would that be a reasonable way to describe a required number of trees? Or
I
whatever?
will be very coy in my recommendation to you what you think is appropriate. You may describe
Okay.
it that way. It would make sense. I will make you aware of a definition in the code that could or could not be helpful.
Okay.
We do describe, and it is in our Article 8, the dimensional standards. We talk about what is a front yard, and it starts at face of building. So whether or not that's helpful, I don't know in terms of describing where the building starts. If you're looking at impact mitigation measures.
Hmm.
So fence, the length of the building, or trees adequate to cover the length of the building? Which
That sounds
I
like-
guess is vague too, but
Well, they're going to have to come up with plans for the building and they'll know how many trees, and where they need to put trees. Eventually, there'll be a plan for a building. So,
I think Jeremy needs to know the number of trees.
I think you can do it by,
An idea here.
yeah, go
We
ahead,
are for
Walter.
5. That's 1 every 25 feet.
Yes.
That sounds like a reasonable compromise.
sounds reasonable? Okay.
You say 5 or more. Okay. I'm going to recommend a condition for the addition of 5 or more trees in the west setback, or the construction of a fence the length of the building,
At least the length. of the
at least the length of the building.
I'll second that.
Okay. Are we comfortable with the condition that we placed on the riparian side? Does that want to be 5 trees as well?
What do you think, guys? What'll you do?
We as the applicant feel that the riparian side is determined and preserved the way it is. There's the cottonwoods that grow there, and they're not going to take anything out on that side. So it's at the top of the bank, and then it goes down
Mm-hmm.
that end. So I don't think it needs additional mitigation on that side, and staff wasn't concerned about mitigation. I don't think Jeremy could speak to that as far as that side of the property.
Would we want a condition that just, it would add to maintain, or during construction to keep the current,
Maintain the water.
maintain the current vegetation on the, around the water body? Would that be?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, will staff write a condition to during construction to maintain the current riparian area,
Nature,
nature, trees, please?
nature of the trees, et cetera.
So, you want tree protection for the existing trees on site that fall within the adjusted water body setback?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Thank you for saying that, yes.
Go along with the applicant's desire.
So there will be 3 conditions on our approval. Right?
So there's the either or fence trees.
On the west
On the side.
setback. Maintaining the current vegetation on the water body, inside the water body setback. And the restriction on, 75% restriction on building inside of the 125 by 5 foot
I'm supportive of that.
building envelope on the west setback. Does that sound right, Jeremy?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds like we're making a motion of approval with these 3 conditions. Do we need a second? And then, or is it official? Do we need a second, or we do the motion and the second at the next meeting?
Yeah, you will table it until we come back with, so you have denied the resolution presented before you,
Okay.
and you have then otherwise tabled the item, so that we can bring it back to you for final vote and approval as, directed by the Board of Adjustments.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Last meeting, or are you doing Board of Adjustment?
Pardon me?
Is this your last meeting, or are you still, some terms are ending for some of the commissioners, aren't they?
I don't know if mine is. I haven't been given a notification yet.
No X.
Thanks for everybody's good, thoughtful input.
Lightning story. We talk about, and I want you to keep this in mind, when you talk about wildlife corridors, well, what happened in the past was we had somebody, a rancher, leasing the land up in Emerald for cattle and for sheep. So the cattle would come down, so that's was part of it. And the other one was when the sheep had young men from Peru
Mhm.
on the hill there.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, if they were very young, they'd come galloping down on their horse crying because they had no idea that they would be in a situation like that up there. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Noreen.
First,
We don't have minutes or anything to approve, do we? Is that the conclusion?
I don't think we had those.
I don't think there were.
think I
minutes
see
in here.
Okay. Okay, then do we get to conclude our meeting?
Okay, the meeting of the Board of Adjustments on March 19th has come to a conclusion.